Good evening to our Columbia community and welcome to From Story to Screen, the journey of an Emmy-nominated documentary. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm TJ Givens, Columbia College Class of 2019 and the Programming Co-Chair for Columbia College Women, the official alumni organization of the college. The mission of Columbia College Women is to amplify the voices of and leadership of women at Columbia College and across the whole university. We are committed to fostering a dynamic community that supports alumni and students throughout their entire lives. I'll be your moderator this evening. More about tonight's conversation, From Story to Screen, the journey of an Emmy-nominated documentary. This is such a special conversation. It's been in the making for quite a while with Brad Bailey GSAS’19 and Columbia filmmakers Jered Everson and Deanna Cuadra as well, both CC grads in 2019 and 2021 respectively, on their New York Emmy-nominated short documentary, Her Fight, His Name, the story of Gwen Carr and Eric Garner. Filmed over 6 years, the documentary offers an intimate portrait of Gwen Carr, mother of Eric Garner, as she continues her courageous fight for justice. This session will share behind-the-scenes insights into the film's making and impact and discuss the ongoing fight for reform. Without further ado, please let me introduce our Columbia filmmakers. Jered Everson, Columbia College Class of 2019, is a Minneapolis-based filmmaker who focuses on social impact. He was inspired by his mother, a civil rights attorney. Everson co-produced with Deanna Cuadra, CC20, who also wrote the film, the three-time New York Emmy-nominated 2024 short documentary, Her Fight, His Name, the story of Gwen Carr and Eric Garner. The film was directed by Brad Bailey, co-produced by Douglas Blush, and features composition as well. It screened at Amdocs, Indie Shorts, American Cinematheque, and the American Academy in Rome, and was awarded the U.S. Congressional Commendation. Everson recently helped to secure the international multi-channel distributional rights. He also produced the Medical Civil Rights Initiative, a 2024 New England Emmy nominee, and the Health and Medical Short Form Content category, and produced the 2019 short film Hail, also directed by Bailey, which won the Gold Prize at the Student Oscars in the documentary category. Everson is in post-production as well on Shatiki, a drama directed by Academy Award winner Nani Sakra-Walker. Welcome, Jered. And Jered and I were really great friends at Columbia. We graduated in the same year. We met at the Columbia sports section of The Spectator and had some great memories, some great late nights producing the paper. And I'm just so proud of him. So welcome, Jered. Glad to have you here. Brad Bailey is an alumnus of the Graduate School of the Arts and Science class of 2019. His 2019 short film, Hail, won the Gold Prize at the Student Oscars in the documentary category. The film was also BAFTA nominated and won first prize in the documentary short category at the Rhode Island International Film Festival. Bailey was awarded the 2025 Duke University Rubenstein Library Digital Storytelling Award for directing the 2024 short documentary, Her Fight, His Name, the story of Gwen Carr and Eric Garner, which was screened at the American and African Pavilions at the Cannes Film Festival. Her Fight, His Name was recently nominated for 3 New York Emmy Awards, was an international winner at the Melbourne Documentary Film Festival, and was screened at the Bronze Lens Film Festival in Atlanta. Bailey earned a master's in oral history from Columbia University in 2019 and a master's in journalism from UC Berkeley. In 2024, he earned a master's in education from the Harvard Graduate School of Education, where he hosted the Critical Conversation series and remains a fellow. Welcome, Brad. Glad to have you here. And finally, Deanna Cuadra, Columbia College Class of 2021, is a New York City-based filmmaker dedicated to sharing the stories that challenge and strengthen our conceptions of community. I love that. She wrote and co-produced with Jered Everson and Douglas Blush the short documentary, Her Fight, His Name, the story of Gwen Carr and Eric Garner, directed by Brad Bailey. The film has screened at Amdocs, Indie Shorts, American Cinematheque, etc., as already mentioned, and it was awarded a U.S. Congressional Commendation as well. Cuadra earned a bachelor's in film and media studies and exercises the other half of her brain cells as a senior reporter with the Financial Times. Let's get started. Over to you, Jered.
Thank you very much, TJ, and I'm so appreciative of our friendship. all of us here tonight are very proud Lions, and it's rewarding and really coming full circle to be able to share this with the Columbia community. Brad, Deanna, and myself, we all met at Columbia. We built the early momentum with this project at Columbia, late night conversations at Butler Library as Eric Garner and Gwen Carr's story played out in real time in New York City. With that, I'll have Brad orient us to the film and look forward to viewing it and discussing it together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jered. And thank you, TJ, for that wonderful introduction. It's great to be here. I hope the audience enjoys the film. It's going to be about 30 minutes long, and we're going to come on after the film to talk about the arduous but challenging but also joyful process of putting that work together. So thank you.
Put your hand behind your back. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe.
Some people that call me Eric Garner's mother, some people call me Gwen Carr. There's no sense in someone else telling it and you being an extra in your own story. And the only way to do that was for me to get out there and speak his name. They are my greatest memories, these photos. I focus on them, on the good memories, the past memories, the things that we've done together that remind me of the good days. I meditate sometimes. I sit back, reminisce. I do draw a sense of strength from the photos. It helps me to reflect back on yesterday, and it helps me to come to grips with even the tragics that has happened since these photos has been taken. I have a sense of comfort when I have these photos to look at on a daily basis. I was born 1949 in Brooklyn, New York. My father became a minister. He was a pretty strict, straightforward person. And he used to always use the phrase, you know, you have to respect yourself before anyone else can respect you. So we grew up with pretty good values because he used to teach us the way to go. A parent only could lay the foundation. The child has to build the house. And I think he laid a pretty good foundation for us. I met Eric's father long before him and I got together because we lived on the same street. But when we actually got together, I was 18 years old. I was with him until he died. He had high blood pressure. He had a stroke and he died. I was widowed at the age of 27 with 3 young kids, and I had to learn how to get along all by myself. So I just made a decision that I was going to get up, I was going to focus on their future, and that's what encouraged me to go to college. I worked for New York City Transit Authority for 23 years. I started there as a conductor. I later on got a promotion to train operator. I remember one day there had been a track fire and there was a guy fussing about the train being late. And he says, "Oh, no wonder the train is late. It's a woman operating the train. You shouldn't be late because I pay your salary." I got annoyed with him, so I just said back to him, "I pay your salary too, because sometimes I eat at McDonald's." So he looked at me and he just turned red and he just walked away from the train. So what's taking me so long? You should have came and fixed it yourself. The first time I actually met Ben was back in '78, but then we hadn't seen each other for years. We would talk, and we would talk all the time on the phone. I guess reminiscing about old times. So he came to New York. We got married up here in New York. I always took composites of my kids. I always had the photographer come in. It's just such a great thing to have to look back on the memories of your children when they were that age, because when they grow up, sometimes you can't even imagine them being that small. This is Eric graduating from high school. He was so proud of himself, had on his tuxedo and was glowing, but he wasn't glowing more than I was. I was really glowing that day that he graduated. I'm proud of all my children, and every time they reached a milestone, it just warmed my heart. My father was my rock. In January of 1996, he had a massive heart attack. Then at the end of the year, that's when I lost my son. Emery went on vacation up in Troy, New York, and was robbed and murdered. I see Eric in front of my door, so he just says, "Oh, I just came to be with you, Mom." I walk in my house, now I see all my relatives. Now I know something is wrong. And then they told me Emery is dead. Oh, I shut down for a long time after that. It was just the start of a horrible nightmare. I was operating the train from Coney Island to Astoria. My phone just keep on ringing. I said, "Why is everybody keep calling me?" When I got back to Coney Island, my husband was in the dispatcher's office, and when we get downstairs, he suddenly just broke down and told me that Eric was no longer with us. I just had a fit. I tried to kick the window shield out. I tried to get out the car because I felt like if I could get out the car, I could run to Staten Island faster then that car could take me. And when I got there, I didn't know how Eric was killed, why he was killed. All I know that they told me my son was no longer there. To this very day, I have never watched that video in its entirety. I was very angry, I was very bitter at the way they had taken his life. I was in a dark place. I didn't want to get up. I wanted to lay there in the bed. I wanted to draw the curtains. It's not a good place to be when you start reliving the anger, because I didn't think that I could handle this again.
Until the killing of black men, black mothers' sons, becomes as important to the rest of the country as the killing of a white mother's son. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until this happens.
I can't breathe! I can't breathe! I can't breathe! I can't breathe!
The protests are growing larger and spreading across the country.
Hundreds shut down major highways in multiple cities.
Police officers failed us New Yorkers because they let an innocent man die, beg for his life, fight for his last breath.
Like so many New Yorkers, I was very troubled by the video. This incident was a tragedy. There will be a very thorough investigation.
There was about 4 officers who pounced on Eric that caused chest compressions. There were officers who stood by and did nothing to help de-escalate the situation. And far as I'm concerned, they all were directly involved, and I want all of them to stand accountable.
His death was ruled a homicide by the medical examiner, but the grand jury choosing not to indict Officer Pantaleo.
Well, I was hurt by it.
So if you talk to the lawyers a little bit about, where
well, the feds going to take over.
I knew I had to get out there because I wanted to keep my son's memory alive. I wanted to keep his name alive. Enough is enough. We're losing our family members. I'll do it my way. My son and others are gone, but we have the unborn to save, the grandchildren, the nephews.
It is rousing round of applause for Gwen Carr, the mother of Eric Garner.
We have to protect the children together. And the way we protect them is through each other, through community. No one should look at these incidents as a news story. The news story go away. We have to live with this. This is our everyday life.
There will be justice. You think it's swept under the rug? No, it's not going to be swept under the rug. We're not going away, so you can forget that.
This thing keeps happening over and over again. It's like them murdering my son over and over again.
We remember all the people these police killed. We can feel their spirit. They're with us still.
We want to update you on the continuing news coming out of Minneapolis this evening.
When he said, "I can't breathe," how did you respond?
It just sickened me. It was just like bringing me back to the day that it actually happened to me. And then when I found out he no longer had a mother and was calling out to his mother, sounds like he's just calling on all mothers in America. The shrine I have is just what people have given me after his death. Even my granddaughter, I have pictures with her at different rallies with her father's picture in the middle. That corner, I just have a lot of things there that reminds me of him and of my granddaughter, Erica.
Eric Garner!
He took to the streets right away, and she went very hard at trying to combat her father's death. That put a lot of stress on her. As a young woman, it took a total toll on her.
With cameras or without cameras? With your support or without your support? That's right. I'm gonna be out here representing for my father.
The stress because of her father's death and her health, they were all connected.
No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace!
I went to the hospital, and she was unconscious. I was rubbing her feet and trying to talk to her, and I says, wow, here we go again. That Saturday morning she died, I went to the hospital, seeing her laying there, and it was just too sad to see my granddaughter laying there, lifeless.
And I cannot imagine the toll that it has taken on you and your family, but to be able to endure that toll and then put yourself out there, how do you have the strength to do it?
When you can make another mother a little more comfortable after she has lost her child with just embracing her or trying to listen to her story, it's a form of therapy. A commemoration is when you remember your child who has been murdered and you focus on the good things about him and you try to make a difference so that they are remembered and that their names are never forgotten.
My son, Gary Hopkins Jr., was murdered November 27th, 1999. An officer came and made one fatal gunshot wound to Gary's chest, killing him. From that day, I vowed that I would have to fight.
Court was 31 years old, and he was having car problems, so he pulled up on the side of the road. And the police officer stated that he thought he saw an abandoned car on the side of the road, so he went over to investigate. And so he ended up shooting him.
My son's name was Timothy Dawkins. Well, Timothy was my baby son, and he took a bullet to the back in his spine.
My son was 24 years old when the municipal police officer pulled him over, and they fired 22 times at my son.
The person that killed my son never knew my son, never saw him in his life. Shooting at someone else, one bullet took his life. My last conversation with my son was about his future. Any child that is Black in this country, it's a very deadly place.
We as mothers, we go in support to try to get clarity and to try to get accountability. This is what that movement is about. When we come together, no matter who we are, how many mothers it is, we say we are mothers of the movement. No matter how you lose your child, it is a pain that you just can't imagine. There's so many of us who was thrown into this exclusive club that no one wants to be a part of. But we have found a way to bond, how to comfort each other. We laugh together. We cry together.
Remember that day that I was at home and I saw on the news when Eric Garner was murdered by the chokehold. And I sat on my bed and I cried. Because although I didn't know his family, I felt their pain. I felt their pain. And I could not believe that they were still doing the same thing and they're still getting away with it.
We answer the call because we know what she must be feeling or what she must be going through.
Garner's mother and protesters are putting pressure on Mayor de Blasio.
What do you say to de Blasio?
Fire those officers immediately, not September.
I know that's right.
That's right.
Thank you.
Don't wait for my birthday. My name is Gwen Carr. I'm the mother of Eric Garner, who was killed 4 years ago. I just want to know, would you agree to holding all of those officers accountable?
I feel very strongly that what leaders do is respect that this process has to play out.
Sure, you know, Daniel Pantaleo has been charged with the NYPD, but is that enough? Is that satisfying?
No, well, you know, today I want to just talk about the commemoration. I'm going to do all that after. This is to remember Eric. We have to make noise. We have to keep our children's names alive. We're not going to let them die, even though they lie in their grave, but we're not going to let them die, because as long as they got a mother, they got a voice. So I'm here today again, having to lay flowers on my son's grave, and it just hurts so bad, but he knows that I'm his voice now that he's gone, and I will always be his voice, because nobody could tell your story, Eric, better than I can.
Amen, amen.
And I will keep on telling it until someone listens. But I have mixed emotions about what's going on and what's going to happen. Stu London keep playing games. This is our life, and he's treating it like a chess game. Stuart London is the Police Benevolent Association lawyer. He was saying that my son caused his own death.
Nearly 5 years after the death of Eric Garner, a disciplinary trial got underway today for the NYPD officer accused of using a chokehold on him. In opening statements, a prosecutor said the officer used a strictly prohibited chokehold, absolutely banned, without exception. But his attorney says the technique was not a chokehold and that Garner's obesity and asthma contributed to his death.
The mayor is placing blame on the feds.
The federal Justice Department told the city of New York that we could not proceed because the Justice Department was pursuing their prosecution. To make this a fairer country and to make sure it's a country that puts working people first.
Old language.
Fire Pantaleo! Fire Pantaleo! Fire Pantaleo!
He knew what he was doing, that he was killing Eric Garner, and yet he has not been brought to justice. That police officer should be off the street.
I know the Garner family, they've gone through extraordinary pain. They are waiting for justice, and they're going to get justice.
Maybe now justice will prevail.
And we continue to follow the breaking news of the day. The NYPD officer implicated in the death of Eric Garner has been fired. We've seen the reactions from some of Garner's family and local officials all day. And now Garner's mother is holding a press conference right now to address the news.
I thank you all for coming out with the support that you have been giving me for 5 years. It's been 5 long years that I have fought this fight. I have not fought it alone because many of you have been out here with me.
I've been out seeking justice for over 5 years, and this was the first little crumb of justice that I was going to receive. So I was just overwhelmed. My husband has had a great impact on my life. He stood right there by my side. He always was agreeable with anything that I had to do with the activism. Getting up in the morning without him took some getting used to. When I was young, I always dreamed that my children would grow up to be productive citizens. And my dreams were for them to accomplish whatever dreams that they had in mind, and for me to be their backbone. So my dreams would have been what their dreams were. I've spent my greatest years with all of these people who are on this wall. And I miss them all so very much. It's a double-edged sword because I have so many good memories of each and every one of them. Those memories will live with me forever. The picture over here is a picture of Eric's youngest daughter, Legacy. Legacy was born 4 months before Eric was murdered. It was just like she was a miracle child because she was born, she was less than 2 pounds, and she made it through. So I always say she made it through for a reason. And her mom named her the right name, Legacy, because that's what she is. I'm still walking on my own, talking on my own, getting up out of bed on my own. I just feel like even with all of my disparities, I have blessings. I have so many blessings that has been bestowed upon me. So I'm thankful, I'm grateful, and I just feel like I'm blessed and anointed by God. We are a vessel before and after death for our children. When they were being born, we were the vessel where they laid under our heartbeat. And now that they're gone, we have to be the vessel that keeps them alive. I will spend the rest of my life trying to get reform, trying to change laws or make new laws. My pain has turned into a purpose. It's painful for me to keep doing this day in, day out, but I feel like through my pain, I can get closure on my son's death and I can help save someone else's child.
Brad, I'd love to start with you. Just, any immediate reflections and specifically, what moved you to choose Gwen Carr specifically for this story?
Sure, and let me know if you have any problems hearing me. Um, I in I had just finished my documentary film Hail. We were still in the process of which I won the Student Academy Award for in 2017. And my producer is here for that. Isaac can say hello. Isaac can say hello. Is here from California for that film. So we were in the process of doing the marketing for that film. And in December of 2017, I saw that Eric Garner had died, and that she had died of a heart attack. And I had read some of the news reports, and a lot of them had thought that her death had been brought on by the stress of the activism on behalf of her father, and in this country there's a Black maternal health crisis going on, and so and the ripple effects of how racism and that stress can impact the body was also potentially a part of that equation. So that made me angry. That made me very angry, and so as a result, I I I was at Columbia at the time, at the oral history program, and so I was looking for a potential thesis to work on. And so I called Gwen Carr, and she agreed to do the film. She agreed to do an interview. And so I had thought it would be over within 3 months, but it ended up being 6 years. It ended up being 6 years because we had come in, his incident happened in 2014, as people will see with the film. But we had come in 2018, so it was the fourth year anniversary of that. And so we had realized that we were a part of that journey as well. We were front row seats to her journey as well. And whatever, as you saw all the things happening in the news, we were there. And I think it just took its own life, really. I had the most wonderful advisors at Columbia, Mary Marshall Clark and Amy Sterczewski, and this is an oral history film. In many ways, the goal was to do a film grounded in oral history methodology and not just to do something sensational. I wanted a story that was from her perspective only, really. So everything that happened in the film happened as a result of her being in the room or from her perspective. Even the other people talking, she was still in the room when that happened. And I wanted audiences, and I hope that's the case, to be able to identify with her in that process as well. So, and there's no background noise. I hope the background noise is okay.
No, we can hear you crystal clear, and I
Okay,
certainly
perfect.
ascertained that from the film. That was what was so powerful to me, right? Was just everything being from her perspective, even her memories. And Deanna, that was something that you touched upon was the role that memory plays in Gwen Carr's story. So I'm not sure who wants to jump in, but feel free. That's what really came through for me in the film that was so powerful.
Please, and I'll add in there. So as I was at Butler Library goes very late at night. It's a 24-hour place. And that's where I met Jered and of course Deanna. Well, Deanna actually had shared a film class with me, a film theory class, taught by the fantastic, phenomenal Annette Insdorf, who is, just if you Google Annette Insdorf, you'll see that she is the queen of all film in many ways. And so that was a wonderful first way to meet Deanna. So I think it was very fortuitous that I met both of them in each of those environments while I was going through the beginning of that creative process. I think if it wasn't for these two brilliant Columbia College students at the time, I don't know if we'd be here today because each one of them contributed their own brilliance and genius to this story in their own way, and I'll let them tell that in their own stories. So,
Deanna, would you like to go first?
Yeah, well, to jump on the memory question, I think, as Brad mentioned, I think it became quickly clear to us that the only way to really enter the story was it was going to have to be from a very intimate space. And so much of Gwen's strength is rooted in the memory she has of her family. What's, I think, really heartwarming, heartbreaking at the same time is those memories are really positive. She really focuses on hopeful memories, on joyful memories of what her family represented before these tragedies took place. And I do think ultimately the group kind of came to the decision that we really have to ensure that her memory is the forefront of the film, because that is what carries her through her mission. And we talked a lot about how we were going to represent that. I think it wasn't until year 4, I want to say, that we realized that sort of the solution was like kind of staring at us. The photos in Gwen's real home, they're completely surrounding her. This is, so it's not hyperbole that when you're watching the film that you see all these photographs, and especially the way our wonderful editors had them sort of come to life for you. It's essentially how she centers herself and how she built her home, sort of mentally as well as physically. So the photos played a very crucial role in sort of bringing the theme of memory, not just in how she discusses her mission, but also in the way she internally gains strength. Something that, processes. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Jered, do you have any further comments there?
Yeah, well, what we came to find out is that the handful of these cases that still, very unfortunately, we kind of know just by, these names, right? We've internalized these most severe police violence incidents, but they're just a small percentage of these incidents that are happening all the time across the country. Now, police violence and also community violence. And so this subset of typically mothers like Gwen Carr that get this media spotlight, Gwen Carr was a New York City train driver. It's this everyday person that is thrust suddenly into this intense international media spotlight. And so we wanted to capture that, honestly, how remarkable it is that she was able to embrace that and unfortunately embrace it quite patiently due to systemic inaction, waiting 5 years just for the officer who put Eric in a chokehold to be fired. But even in doing that, that fails to capture a whole significant part of this perpetual experience for mothers. When the news cameras go away, what do you do in your private time? How do you actually channel this grief, this pain into something productive? How do you even survive that? And so that was really where we realized that, of course, the case and just the significance of this, civil rights case is critical for setting the stage. But this was ultimately a story of motherhood and parenthood. And, that also connects to why it was so important to just really nail that memory component. How are we going to show that? Because this brings us into her first person perspective and the very critical use of these photos to actually just survive the day to day and recharge and persist with her fight that ultimately, despite everything, remains very positive.
I'm going to add to that. When we started this film in 2018, the film we shot it all over the country, by the way, but clearly it's a New York story. This is a New York story at the end of the day. And I wanted New York City to be a character in the story because it is a character of a city. And I think if this would have happened anywhere else, I believe it would be a different story, even though these stories happen all over the country. But this particular story, New York is a critical component of it. And we thought we'd be finished by the end of 2018. We had even took a celebratory picture with Ms. Carr at the end of our sort of signature 4-hour marathon interview I did with her. And then we sat on it. We sat on it for a few months, and then life intervened, and then we picked it back up again in 2019, where the trial had taken place with Pantaleo, and that became national news. And then we realized, okay, this story is going to continue. I remember talking to my advisor, and she was like, look, the story's not done because it's taking a life of its own. And then we all know what happened in 2020. And so in 2019, I actually flew out to California with Jered and Deanna. We were in Deanna's hometown in California. We were editing this film. We were coming up with the final sort of project for the film. Then her husband died. her husband died in the middle of that process, and I will remember very vividly. I was back in Berkeley, California, of all places. We had actually visited back Berkeley, and I started having a pain in my neck, and I realized I had a pinched nerve for the first time in my life, and I never had pain like that. It's like my whole right arm was on fire, and I remember heading to the emergency room that night in Berkeley, California, where I got the call that Mr. Ben, Miss Carr's husband, had died. And I think it was one of the most devastating nights of my entire life, because I didn't know what was going on with me. And then when I found out what was going on with him, it really just made things worse. Thankfully, my arm healed, but this story continued. This story continued. Of course, when 2020, the pandemic, I would be visiting Miss Carr in almost a hazmat suit, checking in on her, making sure she was okay. And then 2021 to 2024, we finally finished it. I had no idea it would take this long, but I'm glad that it did because it was a great lesson, not just in filmmaking, but in life for me. And I believe it's the same for Deanna and Jered, in terms of like a process that hopefully will guide the rest of our creative lives in different ways. So,
Right. It would have almost done her a disservice, right, to have ended it in 2018 when you all were thinking about that. And it's so powerful that you were, brave enough to continue the story and continue the fight alongside her, which I think speaks volumes to each of you. And Jered, a lot of what you said about, she's not media trained, right? She's stepped up. She's been interacting with the media for all of this time. And on the 4-year anniversary clip that we just saw, when she really took ownership of that situation and she said, nope, I'm not discussing that today. It's about my son. And this is the story that we're going to talk about today. I really found that quite powerful because, she handled herself like a complete PR pro, and took ownership of that and took ownership of her own story. So I found that really powerful. Jered, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, you know, um, she's just an incredible person. The amount of resilience and ability to get things done, yet through it all, just this kindness and this grace and this real outward interest in helping others, because not only has she been fighting for her son Eric, but she along the way has become this inspiration for other mothers who are also going through similar situations. How do we navigate this? How can we work together to navigate our situations? What is kind of like the model to creating change? How can we do this? And so she relives her own situation over and over as part of that process, to be a leader in the sisterhood, that group of mothers, that club, that exclusive club that no one wants to be a part of with the highest price of membership. So, I mean, she's just an exceptional person. That's what I would add to that.
Absolutely. I know each of you have touched upon this a little bit, but would love to delve deeper. What was the actual filming experience like, and how did you choose what to document and in what moments? Would love to start with Brad there.
oh goodness, we knew we had to hit this film from different angles. But I would love to hear what Deanna says as well, because really in that first year, she was critical, really critical. She was the go-to actually, in terms of how to formulate this. I wouldn't have got to the point it got to if she wouldn't have done what she did in the beginning of this. So I'd love to hear how she helped me create that story. But we knew we had to do the core interview, clearly. It was an oral history, so you have to interview your subject multiple occasions, and these are long interviews. And so, but we wanted to also just get her on the protest, when she's protesting, when she's on the road protesting. Some of those times I was in, like, I'd be somewhere all across the world, in Houston or London or wherever, and she would be at a protest, and I would have to find a way to cover that. So I would have to call someone immediately to go out and film her in front of City Hall doing her thing. Or if she's at church, so we had to film her in multiple locations all across the country, from New Orleans to New York City, to New Jersey, to Cleveland, Ohio. We would be there with the other mothers. So sometimes there's a multi-camera shoot where we had to be able to intimately be and intimacy is a critical aspect. We wanted this to be an intimate moment where we would be with her in intimate moments with these other women. And that's not easy to do. That was not easy to do. We had to gain their trust, and hope and keep that trust, not just for a little while, but for years. And that was part of the process as well. But I would love to hear from how Deanna helped me be the voice of reason. And she was so critical at that time. So
Yeah, I think it really comes back to the core of the story. I mean, it all kind of started with, as Brad has said, oral history. I think to me that was sort of the through line for a lot of our decisions. I think when you think about oral history, I mean, it's our first form of storytelling, right? And film being at sort of the where it all kind of meets up, where your visual and your audio and everything, music all kind of comes together. But I think the core interview was very crucial. I think it was very crucial to understand Gwen's story as an oral history, and then to go out and essentially stick by her, even if you couldn't, even if Brad couldn't physically be there, but stick by her to understand, to sort of visualize what she's telling. I think you think one thing about these stories, especially because they're all over the news or all over the media. Gwen's was specifically, but I don't think you realize sort of not just the mental exhaustion, but all the sort of it's a media circus, and Gwen is having to navigate this not just as someone who lost their son to murder, but as someone who is, again, we talk about there's no media training. This isn't someone, this is just someone who is doing their best to seek justice in a country that does not want to give it to her at all. Right? There's a reason why she had to wait that long to get that first crumb. And then I think there was just a lot more. I think there was a lot more in those moments. I think what she said was so crucial in the court interview was, what happens when all the cameras are off, when the lights are off, when it's just me having to go from event to making the speech to this hearing. What does that look like for her? I think was trying to capture more of that rather than, let's say, what you see on the news specifically from her. Not that wasn't crucial to the storytelling, because it is what she's doing, it's what you're seeing, but I think it was supposed to be more about her experience behind the cameras, that the before and then the after, and what she's using to move from event to event. But I want to say that oral history was sort of that through line, was picking from that core interview and then trying to establish some sort of the sort of physicality that comes with what she's saying. I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah, that was great. I want to add quickly to that. We also wanted a story that everyone, this is a particularly African American, she's a Black mother, and she goes through things that Black mothers go through. At the same time, we wanted a story that everyone can identify with. We wanted a universal story because at the end of the day, she is a mother. We all have mothers. We all have mothers who love their children on some level, and we all have relatives with pictures on the wall. These are universal things around the world. This film has shown in 3 countries so far outside of the USA. And it's going to continue to, because I wanted a story that was universal, that just wasn't, because people hear these things and they think that I didn't want us to pigeonhole this story, because Gwen Carr is much more, she deserves much more than that. And I wanted a story that was much more than that. And so I think that's one of the reasons it took so long. We wanted something universal so that no matter who watches this film, where they're from, what ethnicity they are, what nationality they are, they can understand her as a mother at the end of the day, first and foremost. And I hope that's what we've achieved. Because I think that gives it its permanence, its ability to sort of transcend political moments, even in the political moment we're in right now, where everything is anti-woke and anti things that we championed a year ago. I think this film has found a way to still thrive in places that still want honest dialogue that I think goes across the political spectrum and across the aisle, because the folks on the other side have mothers too. and they feel the same way for their children in different ways. And so I wanted this as the core aspect of it. So
your point about everyone has, a grandmother or mother with photos on the wall, right, surrounding them. My great grandma, she had like walls of fame for every member of our family. So everyone was able to go up and, decorate their wall and put trophies on it or whatever that you were proud of. And, even when she passed away, we were all standing there, right, getting to experience the memories. And so that's what came to my mind when I was watching the film, right, of, oh, that's why that meant so much to her, because she actually created that, not oral history, but photographic history around her to actually surround her in that beauty. So,
well, and the last point, she had lost all of her pictures and videos. She had videos of her in a fire about a decade earlier, 2 decades earlier. And so those pictures were all she had. They were all she had. And so that's why we thought about having those pictures come to life, some of them, to give them a 3D essence, to almost be a gift to her that she may have lost those videos in that fire, but here we come along to make them come alive again in different ways. So that was our gift to her. So
a lot of sense. And then when did you realize, in what moment, kind of in the filming or in the post-production editing, when did you realize the story that you were really telling in the final film? I think it has a lot to do with what Deanna was mentioning about the photos kind of hitting you in the face right at the very beginning, but would love your perspective on that.
well, I'll let Jered chime in with that. I had he could actually give a good perspective to that as well because they were with me the whole ride.
Yeah, well, as Brad mentioned earlier, it seemed like every moment where we were sure that the story was done, that the film was done, there was another element that popped up that was essential to the overall narrative. And so, I mean, one thing was for sure very early, which was, this was going to be a story told through Gwen Carr's perspective, as the others have already mentioned. And it was going to be a story that, takes us low, sinks us low, all of this pain, all of this tragedy, losing her two sons, losing her granddaughter. Even before Ben passed away, that was already like, wow, all of this loss. And then Ben passed away. But despite everything, descending, seemingly lower and lower and lower, she always maintained this genuine sense of like gratitude for what she still had, her remaining grandchildren, her daughter, for the time she did have with these people, for the photos and memories that these photos generated with these people. And so the entire way, we knew that we would have to be candid about all of this tragedy, but it was going to end on a triumphant note. It was going to end with a tone of gratitude and positivity and forward looking to make the most of what she can offer, to her family and to society, which continues to be a significant amount.
Beautiful. And what were the significant roadblocks in finishing the film? So you talked a lot about. Go ahead, Brad. Jump in.
Money, 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 money. As the term goes, money, money, money. We had none. We had absolutely none. And so we had to just find a way to keep it moving with that lack of money. And I think the lack of money actually gave the film its sort of rawness in a way, its organicness, because we had to pull it together no matter what. And so it was also by the very good grace of people like Isaac, who's sitting here, and all the way in California, who had never met Gwen Carr. He'll meet her for the first time this weekend. And so it's one of those things where people who had love for her, who had never met her, had sort of come in and weighed in on this because they realized the importance of this. That's who she is. That's what she's done. She has in many ways carried a movement on her back. And so not just alone, she didn't do it alone, but that weight was still on there. And I think that was part of it. And just the good thing is we were able to maintain her trust throughout. That never wavered. That never wavered. We had people doubting us in other ways. Absolutely. Absolutely. But I think the most important person's trust we had the entire time. We also had potential competitors who had come in and had wanted to do this story in different ways while we were doing it. But we just kept with our course forward, straight ahead, because we knew how we were approaching this. And I think oral history was my guiding light Bible the whole time. Just this is an oral history film. This is who we are. This is what oral history is, because there's certain methodology to the work. And it's not film work per se. It is not journalism per se. It's oral history. So it's, I believe that the story a person gives you is the most important thing a person can give you, their story. And I think that I held that to the highest standard first. No matter what private or personal struggles I went through, the pandemic, health issues, money, all of it, struggle, it's severe struggle, blood, sweat, and tears, literally. But I think through that process, knowing that the end result could change lives was part of what I tried to do. And I'm sure Deanna may have something to say as well.
I think you answered it perfectly. I don't know if I have anything to add there.
Perfect. And last question, and then we'll go kind of to audience Q&A. And if you haven't submitted your question, feel free to do so. But what is the key takeaway or one key takeaway that you really hope that people leave after seeing this film? I'd love to hear from each of you on this.
Well, for me, in a moment where a lot of people are looking for a North Star and how to navigate, potentially the political situation and just the chaos of, everything that is seemingly going on around us. I think this story is a reminder that all of us as individuals can make a difference in our communities, local communities, all the way up to national discourse and communities. Gwen Carr very impressively, I think, conducted every subway line in New York City. But as we've discussed, like that's not expected to lead into being thrust into the situation that she was. But she found a way to carry on Eric's legacy, support many other mothers and parents, implement state legislation in New York, contribute to legislation proposals in other states and nationally, and remains very active in that way. And so, we can all find a way to genuinely make a difference.
Deanna?
Yeah, it's funny how much it's changed over the last 6 years. I think for me now it's sort of the question of endurance. It is, of course, remarkable and is a testament to Gwen's character that she's endured, how much she's endured, but why did she have to endure it? Why do certain communities have to endure those things? To have to endure injustices, tragedy after tragedy after tragedy, and then keep walking. And I think that's ultimately this point in history. I believe, especially in America, we're going to be asked to endure, if you haven't already endured, deeply troubling and I think deeply dehumanizing experiences. And I hope audiences, and I hope this for myself as well, can do the work to question why we're enduring those things, for whose benefit. And I hope that can lead to us vocalizing more against injustice and just, more for our neighbors. I think we're going to need community, as Jered said, more than ever right now. I think it's crucial to our survival.
Well done. I think I hope I was at the Venice Film Festival about a month ago, and I was talking to an international audience about this film, and there were people who were sitting next to me, stories from all over, stories from all over. And I told them in the audience that may have never understood what it was like to be in, like, I think Egypt or Libya or wherever they were working on their stories. But I told them I understood. I understood. You know, they may not have never ever come to Staten Island, New York, but they understood, because our goal as filmmakers is to make projects, make works that crosses those boundaries, that are universal in understanding about the human situation and the human. We're all human. That human struggle, and that's universal. And I think that it's made me realize that yes, this is the story of one African American woman in Staten Island who conducted the A train, but she tells us larger human story that needs to be understood by everyone, and that this is a procedural about how one person can effect change in a state, federal, and local level, and make change. One person can do it by their sheer will, with a little help from the folks around them. And I think that lesson is, anybody can take that lesson and understand that. And she understands that. Ms. Carr understands that as well. And I think that's that's the biggest lesson I received. Any other thoughts, Isaac? While we have our other producer here, say hello quickly. Just say hello quickly.
Any other key
Be
takeaways?
part of the project. No, it's an amazing story. Bradley always finds the most amazing, life-affirming stories, and I'm very honored to be a part of them always.
Fantastic.
So, yeah. Thank you, Isaac. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And now we'll
thank you.
shift over to some audience Q&A. This one is from Izzy, CC27. What advice do you have for students aspiring to a career in film production? And what should or could they be doing now and post-grad to help them get there?
I'll let Deanna answer this. She is someone who I've seen go from college to now a full-fledged film and journalism career. So she would be a great way to tell a Columbia College student how to do that.
You know what? I'm gonna give you the advice my acting teacher gave me. Find something you love that's not necessarily filmmaking. I mean, to echo Brad, money, money, money. It's a very hard time to be a filmmaker right now, an independent filmmaker. It is expensive to be an independent filmmaker. This isn't to say that you shouldn't always be pursuing your passion, but ensure that you have, maybe this isn't the most romantic advice, but ensure you have another aspect, another skill that you're passionate about, whether it's writing, whether maybe it's photography. It can be very related to filmmaking, whether it's photography, some sort of documentation, whether it's research that you can also freelance with, you can invest in, because not only is that skill going to help you as a filmmaker, but it's going to give you a bit of stability so you can, choose the projects you want to work on, or really allow your stories to evolve, and you can have a little bit of that freedom. I think it's crucial if you're as an independent filmmaker. This isn't to say that shortly after graduating you're going to find a project and you will keep finding projects and you will never have time for anything otherwise. I think that's very possible, but don't pigeonhole yourself into just needing to get on sets or work on or chase the next story. Ask yourself, essentially, what do you want your life to look like, and then let it kind of figure itself out from there. There's no rush, there's no deadline. You will end up making what you want to make. You'll end up telling the stories you want to tell. It's just a matter of being lucky enough to meet the right people, of course, and then, right place, right time. But yeah, just good to give yourself a little bit of that, I think, flexibility.
You nailed it. Jered may have to say, but I can't top that. That was fabulous.
Yeah, Deanna nailed it. Yeah, I think relationships are always important, might be increasingly important as technology maybe cannibalizes, more and more of the space that we have to operate within. And so to be able to still access the resources and the projects of interest, a lot of it's going to come down to relationships, building out a skill set that creates different angles of entries into projects is also helpful, right? If you can be involved in various aspects of the creative process, well, that might be what's of interest for an available project. If you can offer value in terms of the getting things done side of things, managing a project, fundraising, logistics, different parts of the film's life cycle, then you have different ways to pitch yourself to different projects that may be available at a given time. And so those are just some things that came to my mind.
Thank you. Brad, do you have anything else to add? Nailed it? Okay, perfect. This next question's interesting. How do you remain versatile in an ever-evolving industry where fact and fiction are both being manipulated by the presence of AI? This comes from Janeth, CC class of 2021.
I think that's another Deanna expert conversation because she's handling that right now. But I will quickly preface her because she's going to give the final answer. I am an oral historian, a filmmaker, a journalist, educator as well. And so, part of the films I do, and Jered knows this, Isaac knows this. Not only do I want to film them, I want to be able to teach and distribute what I film. So I want to have a way to be able to get out there in many different ways to communicate that information. And clearly that's with the AI tsunami coming at us. One of the things at Harvard I did was try to focus on AI and new forms of storytelling. I believe no matter what, somebody's still going to have to be, at the end of the day, curating these stories. And so we need to find a way to because I hold back the dam of that, but at the same time be able to handle it like any new form of communication that has entered when radio, when the world went from nothing to radio and from radio to TV and from TV to the streaming. We will find ways to adapt at the end of the day, and I think that's just part of our human story to be able to do that. But I'll let Deanna answer that.
You're much more optimistic. I'm AI's number one hater, but it's a really good question because it's a question I don't think we have answered yet as artists or as filmmakers, even as writers, as journalists. I don't think it's an answer we have. I of course believe strongly in protecting art. Art is, I think, best done when it's done by humans, or when dogs do the paw print art as well. I think that's lovely, but it's best done by living things. So I do kind of sort of struggle to imagine, even though I applaud those that can, what it's going to look like when it's more integrated in people's creative processes. But I don't really have an answer. I think it's going to be, sort of Brad mentioned, it's going to be up to the individual how much they want to involve that technology if they're more on the independent side. But of course, if you work with studios, that might not really be your decision. I think ultimately comes down to where you can exercise agency. I think it's going to be a really important question for artists is where can we exercise our agency, our humanity? The more and more there's this pressure to cut labor down, the more there's this pressure to choose tech, choose AI over people. But hopefully, I have hope that we can figure it out.
Absolutely. Last question here. What change do you hope the film will inspire? And have you worked with, or are you considering working with, an impact strategy team? That comes from Betsy, CC class of 1991.
Hey, Betsy. Hey, Betsy. If you know of anybody with money, we're available. We're available right now. Just say, send us an email right now. That's our problem. We actually have an impact campaign strategy already developed. That's one of the things I worked on at Harvard. The reason I went to the Graduate School of Education, very expensive place, but was to find a way to develop campaigns like this in a world that is becoming increasingly stratified and challenging in terms of in terms of voices that folks may have considered woke or social justice. How do you maneuver through that? I think we found a way with this film. I hope to have found a way with other films. I think that I want to create work that, like I said, that spans that. Because I think, right, and we're doing an impact campaign in Georgia 2 weeks from now, where I'll be going down there and teaching, doing a town hall of sorts, in a red county, actually, about this film. And so, I think there will be places to go, but we need funding. Funding is critical. So if you know of anybody, hello, reach out to us, because that's what we're working with right now. We have one developed. We have started it. But we were just in Houston this past weekend with Ms. Carr at a wonderful black film organization down there, screening the film and then introducing her to a whole wonderful array of Houston creators in the Houston community who are thriving in different ways. And that's what we want to be able to do with this film. Share it to all types of people and go to where they are and share it with that group of people. I was over in Europe, but I wasn't unfortunately able to go to the Port Townsend Festival in Washington State because it was too expensive to fly to when I was in Ireland. And so how do we make this work? That's the challenge we're facing right now. But yeah, I'm open ears and email to anyone out there who may have a solution for that.
Betsy, if
Thank
you
you, Betsy,
are
for that.
if you are a impact strategist and will have some time on your hands, feel free to reach out to Brad.
Yes. But Jered and Deanna may have some thoughts about that.
I think Brad absolutely nailed it. I mean, in our mind, we're creating films that are the most versatile tools to generate ROI in terms of the financial side, but also in terms of impact and community engagement and education, fundraising for organizations, collaborations. And so when we have a film like this, it's really a versatile tool that we have started to deploy in Rome, in Houston, in Harlem, at Maisels Documentary Center, just several blocks from Columbia, in Inglewood, right, in LA. And so, but we feel like we're just scratching the surface. And so we're gonna keep pushing with what we got. And yeah, I mean, the lasting impact we seek is to, like Brad said, impart upon people the universal aspects, right? We can all step up and do something in our communities at different levels. So.
One good thing, though, the film will be playing on public television around the country soon, and will also be playing on airlines coming to you soon as well. So you will be able to see this film, my last film, Hail, will be playing. They didn't pay us, but that's okay. But at least the exposure is good. So at least we'll be able to get the story out there about the type of independent film work that we do out there to more people. Because I believe in the power of wonderful stories that are in our plain sight, people who change our world, who we see every single day, potentially. The man living down the street from you, the individual you see getting your coffee every morning. These people in their own ways, I think everybody changed the world, but there are some people whose stories need to be told, And that's what we're going to continue to try to do.
Before we close here, that was going to be my last question to each of you, is how can we support, how can we support the film? How can we, obviously, sharing on social media I know is helpful and where my mind goes, but are there other ways, Brad or Jered, Deanna, anyone that we could help support you as a Columbia community?
I'll speak last. So I'll first hear from Jered and Deanna and see what they have to say.
Absolutely. I mean, any tailwind to this particular project, to our ongoing work, in the spirit of this project, we welcome. And so I guess what we would just encourage is, reaching out, contacting us, if there's a way that we can circulate our contact information, that probably would make it practically feasible to get in touch and think about things.
Sure. Sounds great. Well, thank you all, Brad, Deanna.
Deanna, did you have anything to say, Deanna?
Beyond I mean, discussing the film after you've seen it today is always good. Talk about it with your friends, bother your roommates. Yeah, sharing it on social media helps. I mean, in any way you can engage with it, not just this film, but any film or any story that you feel really strongly moved by. Engage in any way you can. It gives some visibility, but then it also emphasizes that these stories are necessary, that they're wanted, and that's, I think, yeah, it's the biggest thing I think we can do for each other and for our stories.
You know, I'd like to add to not give in to despair. Not give in to despair. That is literally the most important ask I can ask of anyone. Not money, not to your own lives, to not give in to the despair that you may see around and the pressure to go away from these types of stories. That, you know, I think that in this period of time, we have to be true to who we are as Americans, as people, as anybody that wants to see justice in any way defined in this world. These are the moments where that matters. And to continue to tell these stories, to pick up our own camera, whether it be your cell phone or whatever, and go tell the stories in your own community, to change your own community. That's one of the benefits I love of oral history. And the reason I loved it so much is that I saw that there was an oral history done in Cleveland where this individual went out to interview people who were unhoused in that community. And through doing these interviews, he was able to come up with a shared narrative of these individuals that made a policy change. And I think that that's what we need to do right now, to not get despaired by the news or feel like we need to run away from things called woke. Run to it, run headlong into it, because this period will not last forever. And this is the time we need to tell these stories. So.
Thank you. And thanks to each of you for your time and the thoughtful conversation, and specifically for the film and sharing it. We really, really appreciate it. Sharing your insights.
Goodbye, Isaac.
A big thank you to our alumni and students and friends who have joined us. Up next on the CCW calendar, so we have a CCW countdown to the New York City Marathon on Zoom, October 22nd. You can join this conversation to gain some tips or insights on running, and more specifically marathon training. We have our CCW author series coming up with Namrata Tripathi, CC class of 2001, and Callista Brill, CC class of 2002. Namrata is editing and publishing Callista's first graphic novel for children called Creaky Acres. There'll be a live webinar on October 27th on this topic. And the last thing I'd like to highlight is our alumni talk, The Shape of Power, Race, Representation, and American Sculpture, which will be a live webinar also happening on October 29th. Just a reminder, our giving day is October 21st, so please show the power of female philanthropy by donating to the Columbia College Fund on that day, if at all possible. Just really want to emphasize that our alumni community here at Columbia, you saw the power of it today, right? All of these individuals met at Columbia on Butler Library, I'm sure, during a late night and led to, you know, a life-changing film. So it's a lifelong resource, and it's a shared home base for each of you. It's where mentorships take root, our collaborations begin, and doors open, both for careers, creative projects, and service as well. So please stay connected, and it will also allow us to amplify our impact to carry forward the values that we share on campus into the wider world. We would love to keep this momentum going, so please join all of our upcoming programs, invite a classmate, or allowed to volunteer for your time and expertise. If you would like to get more involved, please reach out to us at ccwomen@columbia.edu. Thank you so much again for spending part of your evening with us, and please have a wonderful night. Thank you all so much. Goodbye.